So here today we are going to discuss chapter 32 and 33 of Great Expectations. And I'll not necessarily go through the quiz questions, but I put the quiz questions because I want you guys to think of your reading as if you're reading a test, like the tests you take for the ACT or the pre-ACT. So it is very important to me that I actually allow you to read something raw and give you a quiz over it. And I think I allowed you to use the book because I also want you to go back and kind of analyze what you're answering and what you're thinking. So I hope you did that. Okay. I want to direct you to a few things. First of all, in this chapter 32, Pip gets a letter. Now, this is the second time, kind of, where Pip has received a letter. And every time he receives a letter, we find it to be significant. The letter he got before was from Billy. You remember that? And it was about Joe's coming to London. And Pip's reaction is a foil in chapter 33 to his reaction in chapter 27. For example, and you can take the book and you can look at those two sections. First of all, we'll go back to chapter 27. And it says here, after he got the letter, by the way, the letter from Billy is long, it's emotional, it has some personality, okay? So this back and forth comparison between the two letters. Now, he says this, I received this letter by post on Monday morning, and therefore its appointment was for next day. Let me confess exactly with what feelings I looked forward to Joe's coming. Not with pleasure, though I was bound to him by so many ties, no, with considerable disturbance. If I could have kept him away by paying money, I certainly would have paid money. Page 231. In chapter 27, Pip gets an emotionally connected, compassionate letter. And then he says, I don't want Joe to come. If I could pay him not to come, I would pay him. Okay, the foil, chapter 32. Excuse me. He gets a letter from Estella. Estella doesn't say she misses Pip. You know, she told him a few days ago she doesn't have anywhere in her heart where he occupies anything. So he should understand that. He really should. But he says this. The letter simply says, I write in obedience to it. Miss Havisham has that impression. Miss Havisham thinks you're going to pick me up. So I'm writing because she told me that's what she thinks you should do. Estella is not in it. Okay. Now then, the next paragraph. After he reads the letter. If there had been time, I should probably have ordered several suits of clothes for this occasion. What occasion is this he's talking about? Going to pick up a girl at the coach stop. It's like you buying several suits to go meet somebody at the airport. Do you need several suits to do that? Well, that's how he feels. Well, anyway. Okay, but as there was no time, I was satisfied to be content with those I had. My appetite vanished instantly. And I knew no peace or rest until the day arrived. Not that its arrival brought me either, for then I was worse than ever, and began haunting the coach office in Wood Street, Cheapside, before the coach had left the Blue Boar in our town. For all that I knew this perfectly well, I still felt as if it were not safe to let the coach office be out of my sight longer than 5 minutes at a time, and in this condition of unreason, I had performed the first half hour of a watch of 4 or 5 hours when Wemmick ran against me. That is page 275. Pip goes to wait for Estella at the coach stage 4 or 5 hours before she arrives. In actual fact, he's telling us before she even left home, he was already at the airport. This is more like you waiting for somebody to fly from, let's say, Dallas to Nashville. And you arrive in Nashville 5 hours before the person arrives. The person is coming and you get there 5 hours before. In actual fact, Pip goes there before Estella leaves home. He is excited to see her. Now, he did not go to meet Joe. Notice the foil? He did not sit there with Joe. He did not treat Joe well, but he is with Estella. There's a big difference here. Now, Wemmick comes by Pip, and they end up in Newgate prison. Students wonder why they saw this running with convicts. Now, Jaggers, of course, that's what he does. And Dickens here compares Wemmick visiting the prison like a person who has a garden. Now, I like gardening. I have a garden back in the back of my house over there. And I visit my garden often, especially now that I'm fighting some squirrels who own the garden. Wemmick walks amongst these people who are in prison, who are either going to get out or be hanged, like a person walking through his cabbage garden. Okay, and the government is always harvesting from this garden, and so is Wemmick and Pip. But here, Dickens writes this in a very complicated way, actually. For example, he mentions Wemmick's post office. Wemmick's post office has become known to us now as his mouth. So he is kind of dehumanized. He's really not a person in prison. He's a post office. He's a functionary. He's just a thing. It's when he crosses the bridge out of London that he wears his home face and he has a dad and he takes care of his dad, etc., etc., etc. And he talks to several prisoners. He shows no emotion. Some of them already know they'll be killed or released. And they walk around here for some time. And they even meet somebody who is going to be hanged. And they're all kind of okay with it. And then they get out, and Pip goes out back to wait for Estelle. Now, that is simply what is in chapter 32. It's not a very complex chapter. Except for those things. I want you to look at the end of the chapter. And it says this: Mr. Wemmick and I parted at the office in Little Britain, where suppliants for Mr. Jaggers' notice were lingering about as usual, and I returned to my watch in the street of the coach office with some 3 hours on hand. When he gets back to the coach office to wait for Estella, there are still 3 hours before she gets there. I consumed the whole time in thinking how strange it was that I should be encompassed by all this taint of prison and crime. That in my childhood, out of our lonely marshes on a winter evening, I should have first encountered it. That it should have reappeared on 2 occasions, starting out like a stain that was faded but not gone. That it should, in this new way, pervade my fortune and advancement. So I need to stop here for a minute. Pip is saying, I can't believe this. I met a convict a long time ago, and I haven't seen him for a long time. And for some reason, his representations keep appearing. For example, now, I am coming from Newgate prison. Why do I keep running into this prison business? And now I'm here waiting for this beautiful, elegant, classy girl, and I smell like prison. I thought I would be done with this a long time ago. Why does it keep mixing up with my future and my interests? Now that's a good question, but it won't be answered in this chapter. Okay, so we have to move on. So he says here, while my mind was thus engaged, I thought of the beautiful young Estella, proud and refined, coming towards me, and I thought with absolute abhorrence of the contrast between the jail and her. How Estella looked so different from prison. Remember Estella's treatment of Joe, who is a hard-working, honest, responsible, respectable man. And here, Pip is not with those kinds of people. He is with a convict. He's just come out of the garden where convicts are kept after being harvested from the general public. And he is horrified that he was with that company and he's about to meet this elegant, upper class girl. He feels dirty. So I wish that Wemmick had not met me, or that I had not yielded to him and gone with him, so that of 4 days in the year on this day I might not have had Newgate in my bread and on my clothes. I beat the prison dust off my feet as I sauntered to and fro and shook it out of my dress, and I exhaled its air from my lungs. So contaminated did I feel, remembering who was coming, that the coach came quickly after all, and I was not yet free from the soiling consciousness of Mr. Wemmick's conservatory when I saw her face at the coach window and her hand waving to me. Pip is so obsessed for those 3 hours with how he smells like prison, with how he stinks like prison. By the way, he doesn't. This is in his imagination. And he goes out breathing to get the prison out of his breath and rubbing his hair to shake all that prison thing out of him and dusting his clothes and whatever he has to do. He is so busy doing that the hours actually pass very quickly without him knowing he did that, without him knowing that the hours passed. He is so caught up in it. And within what appears then to be a short time, because now he has something to do, the coach comes by and he saw her hand waving through the carriage window. And then he takes us back to a chapter. And that was that phrase, what was? What was it? There's a chapter when he asks that 3 times when they're walking in the garden. And when she waves, he goes, wait a minute, that reminds me of something. There's something about that gesture that reminds me of something, somewhere, someone, someplace. So it's kind of a mysterious thing, but he notices it quickly. But he's too busy, he's too caught up now with all the stuff that he has to do for Estelle. And so she comes and we get to chapter 33. And she arrives, and it says this, the first paragraph, you have to read this. In her furred traveling dress, very expensive fur clothing, Estella seemed more delicately beautiful than she had ever seemed yet, even in my eyes. Oh, she's more beautiful than just 3 days ago, or whatever the time was. Her manner was more winning than she had cared to let it be to me before, and I thought I saw Miss Havisham's influence in the change. Estella is much better dressed, and she is a bit better behaved towards Pip than she was before. And Pip thinks, I think Miss Havisham influenced that. He doesn't give the credit to Estella, which tells us Estella is still a boat at sea. She hasn't come home yet to his affection. We stood in the inn yard. Some things start happening here. Dickens won't tell us, but you can sense it. We stood in the inn yard where she pointed out her luggage to me, and when it was all collected, I remembered, having forgotten everything but herself in the meanwhile, that I knew nothing of her destination. So Estella stands here and tells people, that's my suitcase, that's my suitcase, that's my suitcase, and Pip runs around and collects her stuff and brings it to her. You notice when Pip was walking with Estella in the garden on page 253 of your book, There's this statement towards the top. Let us make one more round of the garden, and then go in. Come, you shall not shed tears for my cruelty today. You shall be my page and give me your shoulder. A page is kind of a servant. Oh, so Pip in chapter 33 has really become a servant. He picks up Estella's stuff, and then they go wherever they're going. He doesn't know where she's going, but you'll learn that later. So, the first thing she does is command him. She's not here for him to pay for her. He's here for her to serve, but he has to follow his orders. Order number 1, page 281. This is my purse, and you are to pay my charges out of it. Can she not get her hand in the purse and pay people? So she gives Pip her purse, and he has to deal with those people, because she probably won't either talk to them or whatever the case is. So this is my purse, and you are to pay your charges out of it. Oh, you must take the purse. We have no choice, you and I, but to obey our instructions. So Pip refuses to take the purse so he can be the man in the relationship. And Estella cuts that off and says, no, you take the purse. You're going to be paying out of that. We have been told to do that. So we're just going to obey orders. We're not free to follow our own devices, you and I. And so they go to this restaurant, you know this. And Estella tells Pip, yes, I am to rest here a little, and I am to drink some tea. And you have to take care of me the while. So your job is to take care of me. I'm going to sit here, and I'm going to drink some tea. I have a real big cup. And you are going to take care of me. So whatever I need, you make sure you get it while I take a break. She drew her arm through mine as if it must be done, and I requested the waiter, who had been staring at the coach like a man who had never seen such a thing in his life, to show us a private sitting room. Upon that, he pulled out a napkin as if it must be done, or it were a magic clue, without which he couldn't find the way upstairs. And he takes them to a private room where they can sit without mixing with everybody else. And then Pip tells us this room is not very comfortable, but he says that, yet the room was all in all to me, Estella being in it. That is, the room was good. It smells like horses and horse manure and all sorts of inappropriate things. It's London. It stinks anyway. But he says, because Estella is in the room, it's perfect. It's good. I thought that with her, I could have been happy there for life. I was not at all happy there at that time, observe, and I knew it very well. He's telling us, I'm not happy here, but if she's here, I would be happy here for life if she accepted me. She's already told him that before. And then she has told him she's going to Richmond to live with an old lady who must have been paid by Miss Havisham to take care of Estella. And then they talk about where Pip lives. And Pip says, I live quite pleasantly there, at least. It appeared to me that I was losing a chance. At least, repeated Estella, as pleasantly as I could anywhere away from you. Pip is trying to throw in that little Romeo and Juliet, can I kiss your hand thing. Now, Estella is not Juliet. She's not buying it. So she says, after Pip says, as pleasantly as I could anywhere away from you, Estella says, you silly boy, said Estella, quite composedly. How can you talk such nonsense? Your friend, Mr. Matthew, I believe, is superior to the rest of his family. And she changes topic. She goes on with something else. It's like, you silly boy, you wouldn't be happier there with me. You're okay. And they get into this story. Notice up to this point, we haven't really known much about Estella privately. But this is the beginning of us knowing Estella privately. She is now a free person. And this is the first time, although Estella told us she doesn't have a heart, there's evidence on page 283 that she does have a heart. And it is in discussing what Pip's life is like in the hands of the Pocket, Sarah Pocket, Camilla, and all that group. And this is what it says. I'm sure I have every reason to say so. She's talking about, they're talking about Matthew Pocket. Actually, I need to read, let me read back a little bit. Your friend Mr. Matthew, I believe, is superior to the rest of his family. Very superior indeed. He is nobody's enemy. Don't add but his own, interposed Estella, for I hate that class of man. But he really is disinterested and above small jealousy and spite, I have heard. Notice how Estella gives Matthew Pocket some respect. I hear he is not interested in Miss Havisham, and above all, he is not jealous and full of hate. See, I'm sure I have every reason to say so. You have not every reason to say so of the rest of his people, said Estella. That is, you can't say that of Camilla and Sarah Pocket and everybody else. And then she tells Pip, they watch you, misrepresent you, write letters about you, anonymous sometimes, and you are the torment and the occupation of their lives. Pip would know here that Miss Havisham is using Pip, is using him to get the family frustrated. And we know, sorry about that, we notice this because of the conversation that Estella and Pip have. She says here, they watch you, misrepresent you, and she's saying the Pocket family, Camilla and friends, really say nasty things about Pip. You can scarcely realize to yourself the hatred those people feel for you. This is Estella telling Pip, those people hate you. They do me no harm, I hope. Instead of answering, Estella burst out laughing. This was very singular to me, and I looked at her in considerable perplexity. When she left off, or when she stopped, and she had not laughed languidly, but with real enjoyment, I said, in my diffident way, with her, I hope I may suppose that you would not be amused if they did me any harm. No, no, you may be sure of that, said Estella. So Pip is saying, you wouldn't like it if they said bad things about me, would you? And she says, oh, no, I wouldn't. You may be certain that I laugh because they fail. Oh, so she enjoys them failing. Oh, these people with Miss Havisham and the tortures they undergo. She laughed again. And even now, when she had told me why, her laughter was very singular to me, for I could not doubt its being genuine. Pip sees Estella laughing honestly and innocently and completely for the first time that we have met in the book. And then she says, it is not easy for you, said Estella, to know what satisfaction it gives me to see those people thwarted, or what an enjoyable sense of the ridiculous I have when they are made ridiculous. So she enjoys seeing them suffer, but she also protects Pip. So we're starting to see Estella as a person of her own. And Estella eventually on page 284 calls Camilla an imposter. And there's so many other things here. She tells Pip, you may set your mind at rest that these people never will, never would, in hundreds of years, impair your ground with Miss Havisham in any particular, great or small. That is, no matter what these people do, don't worry. They cannot make Miss Havisham hate you. They can't. So Miss Havisham kind of likes Pip or has some interest in Pip. We are learning. We've known that, but Estella is very honest about whatever it is she has to say. And then something happens here. But notice, second, I am beholden to you as the cause of their being so busy and so mean in vain, and there is my hand upon it. And she puts out her hand, and Pip misreads the gesture. As she gave it to me playfully, that is her hand, for her darker mood had been but momentary, I held it out and put it to my lips. So Pip gets her hand and kisses the hand. "You ridiculous boy," said Estella. "Will you never take warning? Or do you kiss my hand in the same spirit in which I once let you kiss my cheek?" And now she admits, "I let you kiss my cheek, but the idea was nothing there." Are you doing the same again? You never grow up. "What spirit was that?" said I. "I must think a moment. A spirit of contempt for the foreigners and plotters. If I say yes, may I kiss the cheek again?" That sounds so much like Romeo and Juliet. The problem is Juliet is not here. Okay, you should have asked before you touched the hand, but yes, if you like. I leaned down and her calm face was like a statue's. So he kisses her, but if you had gone and kissed a post sign or a road sign or a mailbox, just about the same reaction. So now, said Estella, gliding away the instant I touched her cheek, "you have to take care that I have some tea, and you have to take me to Richmond. Now that you've kissed me, go get me some tea and get ready to take me where I am going." Estella treats Pip exactly like a servant. And Pip gets up and runs off to get her tea. We'll get into this tea, but there's an allusion, and I don't know if you catch it on page 285. It's kind of hard to find. But there's something interesting about this. I rang for the tea. So Pip calls for the tea because Estelle won't do that kind of low-class work. And the waiter reappeared with his magic clue, brought in by degrees some 50 adjuncts to that refreshment. Basically brought tea and all the things that go with the tea. But of the tea, not a glimpse. Just all the stuff that goes with the tea bags or whatever they were using, and the cups and the spoons and butter and everything else. A tea board, cups, saucers, plates, knives, forks, spoons, salt cellars, a milk, little muffin, confined with an utmost precaution and a strong iron cover. Moses in the bulrushes. This is kind of some little case of butter that had some butter in it, and it looked like the way Moses was when he was a baby, hidden by his mother and then found by the daughter of Pharaoh. So there's an allusion there to something, okay? But I want you to look at that paragraph, by the way. This is the paragraph on page 285, and what I want you to do, the paragraph starts with, "I rang for the tea." And I want you to notice Dickens describes the bringing of the tea and all the condiments that go with taking tea, but in it you find diction that deals with convicts or prison. Notice the word confined. Notice the word a powdered head. That is usually a British reference to a judge because they wear these robes, and lawyers and prosecutors. The word bars for the bar of lawyers, and being barred and being in jail behind bars. And of course, an urn is a confinement of some sort for the dead. There's the word prolonged absence. For example, if you're confined, you are absent for a long time. You're incarcerated somewhere, which is what an urn does. And a casket is also a container that confines somebody. So, but then he says, after all these things were brought, if you look at that paragraph, after a prolonged absence at this stage of the entertainment, we are going back to the tea, he at length came back with a casket of precious appearance containing twigs. This I steeped in hot water, and so from the whole of these appliances extracted a cup of I don't know what for Estella. Pip takes a lot of trouble to make Estella a cup of tea. Now, who is going to make Pip's cup of tea? I guess not Estella. That's all we can say about that. You go back to when Joe visited Pip, and you will notice Pip did not make tea for Joe. it was Herbert who kept asking, do you want coffee or tea? And Joe says, I don't know, don't you think coffee is kind of... And they talk about all that. And Joe eventually ends up having tea. Pep should have made the tea for Joe, because after all, he knew how Joe likes his tea. In this particular case, Pep takes a lot of trouble to make the tea for Estella. You notice in this case then, in this book, you find a lot